Hello everybody, here we are today doing season recaps over the 2023 CFL season, today talking about the BC Lions. So before we start with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or the CFL, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So better late than never, right? We are talking about this recap for the 2023 season and 2024, but it's still something that I wanted to talk about regardless of the fact that it's probably a little bit late. And today with BC, we have my favorite team. And I think that for the Lions, this was a very interesting year. And why was this year so important for them? Well, it just came down to the fact that there was so many questions going into 2023 about how good this Lions side could be after in 2022 going 12-6 and then making it to the Western Final. Ultimately, big talk was made about the fact that Nathan Rourke ended up going to the NFL, and the shift then became, well, with Rourke, this Lions side was a Grey Cup contender, a Grey Cup favorite, if you will. And now with Vernon Adams Jr., not a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination, this is a team that has a little bit more questions. They were 12-6, but really with Rourke, they were like 8-1. How are they going to do in 2023? And I think that kind of was answered relatively early on, where they were a side that you were aware was probably going to make the playoffs as they started off the year 6-1. And the thing was, in that first 7 games, things were so good for a team. Now, I imagine you would probably say, well, with 1 loss through 6 games, yeah, or 7 games, excuse me, that's not really surprising. But the thing was, we had 2 shutouts in that time, and things were looking really good. However, I think at the same time, too, people forget that there was a point where this season, or just the second half of the season, if you want to call it that, had some highs and lows. And I think, in general, looking at what we saw from BC this season, was my concern, especially at different points in the year, then maybe they weren't good enough to hang with Winnipeg and Toronto, those 2 top teams. And looking at their first 7 games, they went 6-1, and then after that, their final 11 games, they went 6-5. There was a lot of trial and tribulations in that period, but I do think that there were some positive to take away from this. The defense, had some good points. Matthew Betts had 18 sacks, and at times they looked really dominant. Other times things weren't perfect, but they ended up finishing 4th in points allowed. As for the offense with Vern, things looked really good. They were able to go and be 3rd in points per game, and yes, there were some periods where the offense probably could have done better, but I think with what we were hoping would happen versus what actually happened, things went even better than I could have imagined. Vern had a career year in certain categories, and I think with what we've seen with him at quarterback, you would say that this team, maybe they are in a good spot for the long-term future or the mid-term future with his contract and everything. Yes, that Rourke season that we had in 2022 was magical, but think of how many teams just are in a bad spot where they lose their starting quarterback in 2022 or just in general, whatever year it is, and they are left trying to figure out how to stay competitive or relevant. Whereas with BC, they traded to get Vernon Adams Jr., and now they've got him locked up through 2026. And for this Lions team, I'd say things are relatively good. Now, ultimately switching back to what we talked about with the Lions, they would go on to finish the year and make the playoffs. They would take care of business against the Calgary Stampeders. That was a 6-12 side, and that was a fun playoff game, really exciting, and it set up a rematch between the Lions and the Blue Bombers in Winnipeg in the Western Final. Ultimately, though, that kind of felt like a rerun of the 2022 Western Final. Winnipeg probably should have won by more. BC is not there yet at the moment. The offensive line got obliterated. The run defense was not great, as Brady Oliveira points in the game just looked outright, unstoppable. And BC is still in that spot where maybe, to some extent, you could say that in 2024 they could be the second best team in the league, but can they get through that team that's going to be blocking them out west? That's kind of where it seems to be, where the Lions have a lot of work to do if they want to be able to hoist the Grey Cup. Obviously, being in Vancouver this year is a very big deal, but you kind of wonder, is it going to run through Winnipeg again? And you have to imagine, too, that even if it doesn't run through Winnipeg, there's probably going to be a team that you do see in the playoffs. Can they get the job done? Now, guys like Jackson Jeffcoat are gone from the side, but you still know that this Bomber side by Coach O'Shea is going to be good. So I guess we'll see what happens there. But my parting thoughts with the Lions in a relatively short season recap is the receiving core with what we saw looks like one of the best, even though some of the guys are gone, and other guys are kind of up in the air about will they return, will they not return. I don't know at the moment, but still seeing what we have with some of these guys, I think this receiving core is looking really good. Like I said, Vern is looking good, and the offense showed that without a star running back, they could be a very good team. And I think that with Vern staying healthy, this team definitely has a double-digit win total this year. The defense, I'm really hoping, is able to kind of level out the highs and the lows. I'm okay not really having, multiple shutouts in a season, as long as when they play those tough games against those top-tier teams, they look a little bit more like a top-tier side. So with that being said, this is kind of my recap for the Lions in 2023. A good year that backed up a previously good season, and 2024 is going to be very fun to see if this is a step forward or if they get stuck. And then if they do get stuck, what changes will be made? Because again, I think that they're in a spot where they're going to be a playoff team, but are they going to get the job done when the Grey Cup's at home? So anyway, what are your thoughts on the Lions season from 2023? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe and have a great night.